Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Young and Foolish podcast. So today we're going to talk about something that is very much an essential part of our daily lives, something that is very important throughout history and played a big role in many cultures, and something that people might not talk about all the time. And if you haven't guessed it yet, we're going to talk about food today. And since you suggested this topic, Raymond, maybe you'll ask us a question to kick off the conversation, or if you want to mention some, go ahead.
So for food, how do you guys think food has impact, cultures all around the world? And how is that, how relevant is food when it comes to impacting certain cultures or certain communities and, certain people around the world?
Yeah, I have certainly thought about this before, and I've taken courses in university related to it. I am doing a major in Italian language and culture, so there's definitely some aspect of that talked about in some of the courses I've taken. I've also taken a course on the history of beer, and I think there's some similarity there in terms of just kind of how food and food items can really impact cultures, and the main takeaway from all of those experiences and just kind of my own kind of me thinking about it, I would say that one of the most impactful ways that food can have on culture and groups of people in general is really just bringing people together. Everyone has to eat, right? So when you're eating the same kinds of food together regularly, you really have a kind of a centerpiece that you could build a community around. I feel like that is something very important, and that is something we could probably see when we look at historical, paintings, other arts, writing, and more recently, even photos and videos. We could really see a lot of just people coming together and having food being a centerpiece of that. So I would probably say that to begin with, at least, being the most relevant and just kind of impactful thing that came to my mind. How about you, Lorenzo?
I was thinking pretty much the exact same thing. I was thinking oh my God, one of my ears is kind of there's one of my ears is half muffled when I'm talking. That's really annoying, but that's besides the point. But I was thinking pretty much exactly what you were thinking. Everybody has to eat. So throughout pretty much every culture, eating has had some sort of impact, or you see some manifestation of some part of the culture in their eating habits. Maybe in some cultures, everybody gets together and eats together. Maybe in some communities, they make a huge pot of food or whatever. I'm sure that's something around. There's things around like that, right?
Definitely, yeah.
And even in today's world, a lot of times when you don't have something necessarily fun to do with your friends and you just go to hang out, what's the number one thing you do? Oh, let's go get lunch.
Yeah,
let's go get dinner. You know what I mean? Yeah. Brunch, all the, it's a big social part for not only humans, but just a lot of animals in general are very social creatures, and they eat together, they hunt together, all that jazz. So I think food's a massive part of everybody's lives in all cultures.
Yeah, very much it's pretty biological.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I definitely agree with, both of your points. I find that, really fascinating. And so I think food is a really important part, of society, because you do get to interact with others, when you go, shopping for food, or when you go out to eat, like Lorenzo said, with your friends. And it helps create a sense of community as well. It helps build on it, like George said. And it's really important for bonding, or creating a strong relationship with certain people. So especially, families, families that eat together are usually a lot closer and have a stronger bond together.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of like that. And going out with your friends, you're eating, although you're not really doing like a certain type of activity, it is still, an action, and it's still, something to, I guess, like an activity to value almost, because it is important to you guys. So another thing I want to ask is, do you think food has more of an impact on culture, or do you think the culture has more of an impact on types of food within that culture?
Yeah, I was thinking about that before. I was gonna actually bring up the point about how not only does food, really impact culture, but culture actually impact food the other way around. So it's more of a two-way stream. And I'm really glad you asked this, really, because living in Canada, what I really see a lot is a lot of fusion foods. I see shawarma poutine, right? Very Canadian dish, poutine. You add, the shawarma with the spices, the meats, the sauces. You combine them together. It came out really well. It's very unique, and it's a product of these culture really intertwined, right? And you also see stuff like, and I mean, it's not really here, but like in the greater Vancouver area, you have something called Japa dog. So you have something very North American in the hot dog. Then you add this Japanese and Asian in general kind of flavor and essence to it with seaweed or some of the other sauces, and and just you get these combinations of flavors and ingredients that you wouldn't have if it's just one culture staying in the same place. Like the food, it would never evolve that way, right? And in Canada also, aside from the fusion foods, what you also get a lot really is kind of the North American version of other foods. So when you eat a lot of Chinese food, Japanese food, and pizza, stuff like that, a lot of really if you're getting it from just a typical restaurant, it's not gonna be authentic. There are already changes made. The stir fries and the just kind of dishes that are offered on a Chinese restaurant, like on those menus, you're not really gonna find them in China. And it's a very similar thing with Japanese food, like the sushi rolls. Sushi rolls in general are much more popular in North America compared to actually Japan. And also, like some of the most popular sushi rolls that we have here, like California rolls, BC rolls, Alaska rolls, like these things, they don't really, well, maybe they do exist now. Maybe it developed here, then they brought it back to Japan. But they started out here, and these food came about because of the culture here. So not only are we getting fusion foods, we're also getting these changes to these traditional foods. And you could even see similar things happening in other places. Like I was talking about with Japanese food. In Japan and also here, one of the most popular food kind of categories is tempura. And tempura actually originated in Portugal. It was when they went on a voyage and basically sailed, and they were in Japan for a while. And their version of basically fried, vegetables and stuff was adopted by the local Japanese, and then it was developed and kind of altered a little bit and became more of a local Japanese style of the original Portuguese tempura. So when you look at all these history, you could really see all these stories, and you could see the impact that food has on the culture and the culture having it on the food as well. And it's really difficult for me to answer your original question of which one is more impactful, because it's such a significant, it's so significant in both ways is what I'm really trying to get at. I don't know if you could answer this question, Lorenzo.
Can't really answer it, but I have feelings and ideas about it. Might be of value. I don't know. So I think you touched a lot about North America and fusion foods and whatnot. I feel like North America and even just the modern day today is just such a special case because we've never lived in such a globalized world today, in such a globalized economy today. So like a lot of these fusion foods and all these things, they were never possible before, right? For example, like the poutine and like a lot of North American food, like I don't know, hamburgers. I don't know how long hamburgers have been around. So a lot of that's kind of like, I feel like relatively speaking, brand new. And you mix that today with like capitalism, and you know, you could start up your own restaurant. Like you have all these restaurants that kind of like innovate on new things, right? You didn't have that as much or nearly to the same extent. I feel like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it just didn't exist. You know what I mean? I'm sure you had like restaurants that were probably more niche back then, but at the end of the day, I just don't think it would have been possible to do a lot of these things. And with the globalization, obviously, like sushi in North America, I don't think you could get sushi in North America very long ago. You know what I mean? It just wasn't a thing. It wasn't very popular. Canada in particular, I think we touched upon this. I forget what episode we did. We talked about how it's a little bit more like kind of like a quilt or like a melting pot. And I think you see that manifested in the food a little bit, where people try all sorts of different foods and they like all sorts of different foods. I don't know how true that is in other parts of the world, like in particular areas that aren't so globalized, that aren't so economically stable, I suppose. Maybe not stable. Stable is the wrong word for it, but maybe not quite so affluent or globalized. So like, you know, you go to like some random city somewhere in the Middle East, you're probably not going to see the same variety. I'm sure you can still find like pizza and all that jazz, but it's not going to be the same as here, you know, where you got like all the cultures you could ever ask for, basically, within like a couple minutes of ordering food and whatnot. So I think in the modern era, that's kind of like a really special case, because we really don't know. I couldn't tell you what's more impactful on which one, the culture more impactful on the food, or the food more impactful on the culture. I'd be more inclined to say the culture is more impactful on the food, and at least recently. But back in the day, I don't know. Because like I think a good example might be, maybe if you look at like Spanish cuisine, maybe that might have been impacted quite a bit by the Muslim and I guess North African influence there from when they were popping over there. You know, I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but I'm assuming that's a thing. If you look at the language, it was massively influenced. Yeah, absolutely, right? So that would be a really good example of like culture influencing the cuisine, right? So I think just in general, I feel more inclined to say it's the culture impacting the food. Nowadays, it's a little bit more murky, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
But
I don't know if you have any thing to say about that, Raymond, because I do want to bring up other points. So if you have anything that you want to say about that, you could go ahead.
I'll just make a quick point. I definitely agree with, you know, a lot of what you guys have said. And especially, you know, like your thoughts and your opinions and your, you know, the points you guys made about how foods are, you know, they're combining, you know, technically, like they kind of combining from like all sorts of different cultures together. They get it mixed up, and like, you know, it's like a melting pot. It's starting to get like harder and harder to guys separate different foods, like foods from the cultures, because you know there's a lot of intersect, like where it's just, I don't know, it's been kind of something on my mind lately. It's not something you always really think about, but like it's kind of always there. You don't really think about it. You subconsciously, you know, if you get like a shawarma poutine, like you said, you kind of know. You're like, oh, that's poutine, but you don't really think about the shawarma part. You know, like you're like, oh. So I don't know, but go ahead, George.
Yeah, you know, I was gonna just kind of bring a counter argument to Lorenzo saying that cultures is impacting the food more. I feel like there are definitely good evidence for that, but I also want to bring out some points to kind of suggest that maybe food really impact the culture more. And a couple of examples that really came to my mind for that argument is one, in Italy, especially, I mean, you know, even now, like Italians are very passionate about food and the way they're supposed to be, right? You know, you're not gonna put like cheese on fish. You're not gonna put pineapple on pizza. There are things that you just don't do because they have very specific kind of ways about cooking, about eating, about how things are supposed to be when it comes to food, and it has really become, it really just have become a huge part of the culture there. So you could really just see food really having that big impact on the culture rather than the other way around. And then you could also see that in maybe people don't quite realize this if they didn't really look at it further, but in a place like Italy, a lot of the foods are very regional. So if you look at the regional, even if you look at like cities, some like pizza, it's from Naples, from Napoli. It's Neapolitan pizza, right? That's where it originally came from. And that style of pizza, you could have in other places. In Italy, there are some good restaurants in other cities for it as well. And all those are almost, for sure going to be much better than anything you could have here. But you have these dishes that's really just an integral part of that region or that city's identity. And for it to be kind of a centerpiece of that particular region's culture. And you could see the differences just by kind of looking at the food they're eating, the ingredients that they have, the style of cooking. And you can really just see that clearly when you're going from place to place. And I think it's also very similar in China, where you have these Cantonese dishes, and then you have these kind of more northern region dishes, and you have some spicy food in different more southern and central parts of China. You could really see all these different not just dishes, but ways of cooking, and different different things being the main kind of part of a meal. In many parts of China, you have rice being the most kind of common and most kind of basic part of a meal, whereas in other parts, it's noodles, it's some kind of I don't know, bread, or just some kind of similar pastry, or more of a meat based thing. So you can really see these different parts in these countries that are just very different, even if you're only looking at the food. So you could see how food could have big impacts on cultures. So, I think you make some very good arguments, Lorenzo, but I just want to, bring out why it's so difficult to say to say like it's one way or the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's just so many good arguments.
Yeah, it's not one way or the other. It's like you said, it's a two-way street. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very interesting point for sure. But I wonder how much of that is just kind of like a cultural tradition, you know what I mean? Like that's just the way people have been doing it there for so long. It's just part of what it is. Like, for example, with the Italian example, you watch Italians talk about that stuff. I'm like, oh, you can't do that. You can't put that type of cheese on that pasta. What are you doing? Like, I mean, how much of that is that like the food, or how much of that is like the tradition and culture coming out? You know what I mean? It's just the way that they've done it. It's the way that, that's the way my mom taught me,
Yeah.
So the food itself, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if we're just looking at the food, you put that same pasta dish somewhere else in the world, just by chance, let's say. And let's say it was indigenous to, let's say for whatever reason, linguine was indigenous to, I don't know, the Inuit people or whatever. Would they still have that same culture around it? You know what I mean? Would they still treat it the same? Obviously, like, a lot of this also goes into like geography and what ingredients are available. So I think the China example, I don't know if you guys would know anything about it, but maybe how much of that is a result of like, in this region of China, they had these ingredients historically.
It's literally the biggest reason.
Cheaper. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. Right. So how much of that, so like, it's true that a lot of that I feel could influence the culture, but I feel like there's a lot of other factors that influence the food more than the food influences the culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think if you just look at the food itself, it has less of an impact on the culture than the culture has an impact on the food. Wait, did I say that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm all confused now. Dude, my head looking like a noodle bowl right now, man. Oh my god, you guys got me thinking, man. Ramen.
No, ramen is so good. Oh my goodness.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have
Yes,
great
sir.
ramen places.
It'll be
in
interesting
Vancouver.
to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future because now food is just so common everywhere. You know, everyone's got different tastes. So like, for example, you go back 100 years and you ask a bunch of Italians what their favorite food is. Okay, if you ask Italians nowadays what their favorite food is, they'll probably still say something Italian. But let's say somewhere in North America, you ask somebody in North America what their favorite food is, right? And the answers are going to be like all over the board, you know. Like you'll have the popular choices, you know, hamburgers, you know, fast food or whatever. But you also get like sushi and all that jazz out of nowhere because nowadays you don't have to think twice about getting that kind of stuff. You can get whatever you want whenever you want, basically.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like that before. You know, beforehand you had all these constrictions about like, oh, well, this is the ingredients that are available. This is what's financially feasible. You know. So it'll be cool to see how cuisine evolves in the future if it just becomes more inclusive and everybody just kind of gets used to more of a melting pot style of food in their general eating habits.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, they're already doing that for sure, you know?
Yeah. It's just ingredients being available all over the world and people also traveling all over the world. It really makes it easy to cook these different styles and have it, you don't... And also you're talking about just these restaurant scenes and kind of promoting the creativity and wanting to start something new and just really embracing the different cultures and bringing them together. I definitely see that. Like when I went to Italy, there's this great, very interesting place outside of the Vatican City. And so it's in Rome, just outside the Vatican City. I went to a Brazilian Japanese restaurant, and because if people don't know, there is a decently portion of the population in Brazil have Japanese background, and there's definitely a group that is very mixed, and they develop a kind of a more Japanese cuisine with a Brazilian kind of twist to it, and that restaurants serve that Brazilian Japanese style food there with interesting kind of sushi rolls with interesting cocktails, sake based cocktails, and it's just crazy to see a relatively smaller and lesser known culture, the Brazilian Japanese culture, in Italy, of all places. It's just very interesting to see how just globalized everything is and how people are really bringing these different flavors together and bringing them all over the world. And just final point I want to add to that is something I've recently seen on YouTube that I found very interesting, and that is that Thai government funding basically for people to learn how to cook the Thai food and bring authentic Thai flavors and start restaurants all over the world. So when people actually go to like a Thai restaurant in the area, they get like actual, high quality, authentic Thai flavors, and that brings a positive image for the country and improves the tourism. So you could really see just like literally governments bringing their food to the world, like having actual programs like that. And so it's very interesting to see, and it will be even more interesting to see just how these restaurant scenes and how food really evolves as we go, further into the future.
Yeah, that's
pretty interesting.
That was actually, I didn't know about that. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it got me thinking, like, if sushi wasn't a thing, how would tourism in Japan be, I'm sure it'd still be popular, but would it be as popular? Think about it.
No, or think ramen. A lot of people go just for the ramen.
Exactly.
They got so much great food in Japan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Like Italy with the pizza and the
Yeah.
pasta, dude. What if that just didn't exist, man? People would still probably pull out. Like,
Not the same.
for the
Not the
food,
Yeah, it's not the
same.
same.
that's for sure. It's not the
Yeah.
same. It's not the same.
Yeah, man. I think over the years, I think food has really set itself as like an identification for certain cultures. When you think of pizza, you really think of Italy, and when you think of like fried rice or like wontons, dumplings, you think of China. And like same thing goes for sushi, ramen. I just think yeah, like food has become more and more important and like has a larger significance towards what other people may perceive like a certain culture. Like you were saying about the government. Like I think it's very interesting. It's I don't know. It's kind of it's not surprising. Like that's the thing. Like it's like you realize it. Like I heard it. I'm like, damn. Like that's pretty smart. Like that's a good way to market. To globalize, and it just kind of like I don't know. It kind of just brought me back to the thought of like if you have a certain type of cultural food and you really make like a lasting impact on someone who eats it, or an impression of like a certain culture, like that food has such a significant like I guess decision on like whether you will like or prefer that culture, or like you kind of like stray away from it because it doesn't really suit your type of taste buds. I think like food has just become really important lately, and yeah, like it just kind of I don't know, man. It's the same thing. It's the same question. Like which one impacts which one more?
Yeah, it's just
like the
impossible
chicken
to
or the
answer.
egg.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just so many factors involved. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, what I really liked about what you're saying is just kind of the cultural identity for particular foods, and it really got me thinking about how nowadays I cook for myself. I definitely make a lot of different styles of food, but there are certain things from my own culture that I always come back to. So I come from a city in China called Chongqing, and over there, I would say probably the most famous because it is actually really well known for its food, both in China, also outside of China. Except when it's outside of China, people really kind of mix it together with Sichuan because they're very close to each other. And before Chongqing became its like own independent special city. It's a weird thing with China. It's like how Washington D.C. It's its own kind of place. There's a few of those in China, basically, but it used to be part of the Sichuan province, and so that whole region of food. So outside of China, it's kind of really well known for that whole region, the province and kind of Chongqing and surrounding places like that. But in China, especially, the people know Chongqing, the city, and they know it for hot pot. Spicy Chongqing hot pot. That's what they know it for. And that's something I cook every week or every other week. It's something that I enjoy going to a restaurant for. And it's just a very iconic dish from the region and from the culture, from my background. And not only do I love the food, but there is a sense of home and there is a sense of family and that kind of thing just related to it, just because growing up and the experiences I had with it, right? And I think what makes it perhaps maybe even more special than other food is it's really just a hot pot. Like it's literally a pot in the middle that's boiling with hot, spicy broth, and you cook whatever you want in it. And you literally, with the chopstick, you put it in, you let it cook. Then once it's cooked, you take it out and you eat it from your own bowl. So it's really it's like the way of eating as well, the way of cooking and the way of eating. So I'm just saying, like maybe because of that unique style of really eating together as a community, literally right there. Maybe that has made it even a stronger impact on me and the way I feel about it. But I think just food in general that comes from your own culture that you grew up with and familiar with, it really does provide you a sense of home and family and that kind of comfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, sir.
really well said.
I mean, I get pretty nostalgic too whenever I have like some food that I used to have as a kid in Colombia that I don't have as often anymore, you know? Like, but the thing is, I'm not sure if the food is particularly like indigenous to Colombia, but for sure I still feel like kind of same nostalgia, same sort of feeling, you know?
Yeah.
For sure. Not quite the same sense of community, I feel like, because I feel like hot pot's very unique in that, like, you know, you guys are all sharing basically the same hot pot, right? And I feel like no, that's a big part of it, you know? Kind of like Korean barbecue a little bit, but different
Same idea then.
Off the top of my head, I don't think I had anything like that particularly, but I do get very nostalgic. Like whenever I get the chance to have morcilla, which is like this blood sausage type thing, very good. Or when my mom cooks something that I used to have in Colombia all the time, good stuff, pretty good. And I gotta learn how to cook that stuff, man. I gotta learn.
Yeah, I think I also feel the same way, you know, like when it comes to like, you know, Asian or Chinese foods. You know, like I've had my like fair share of hot pot, but like I'm definitely I'm not as close with like that type of eating style as, you know, George. But you know, in China, what we do is we have multiple dishes, you know, where like it's all on the table, and then you kind of, it's for everyone, you know. You kind of have a sense of like a family there. You kind of rotate around. Like if you see a dish you like, you know, you take some from it, and it's kind of like it gives you a sense of, I don't know, it's just a connection with all these other people. And I find that really lacking here. When I first came over, everyone had their own, you know, they got to pick their own the meals, and they stick with it. You know, you don't really share food with anyone. You I don't know. It kind of just seems looked down upon, I guess, sometimes, depending like who you're talking to, or you know, like what background they're from as well. So yeah, like whenever you know I live away from home, and whenever I go back home from school for the summer, and I get that, you know, feeling again, it's very nostalgic. You know, it gives me very, you know, like a feeling of home. You know, a sense of home, and yeah, like you develop strong connections with how you eat, what you eat. You know, like just with food in general, it's pretty interesting how much impact food can have on your life, you know, overall.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you know, you're eating every day.
That actually reminds me of something really interesting. Yeah. No, because Raymond's 100% right. Here we don't have that nearly as much, you know, like you just get your own meal, you eat it, you know, maybe your friend asks you for a couple fries, but it's not like you guys are, oh, you pass me the fries, man. You know, it's not like that.
It's not
But
like
that
the
reminds
fries
me,
is
like,
in the
in the
middle and
holiday
everyone
season,
taking a
actually
little bit.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. That actually reminds me that like in the holiday seasons, there's actually a lot more dishes like that, and that's kind of when people get together and they spend more time, you know, together. Like for example, for like a Thanksgiving dinner, it's not uncommon to have like maybe some kind of ham or whatever, right? So like, yeah, you'll get your portion of ham at the beginning, but then after that, it's kind of like, oh, everyone just goes and gets more ham if they want more ham until we're out of ham, right? Or there'll be ham left over, or there'll be turkey left over, and you just get more until you're done, or with like maybe like a potato thing, or whatever, mashed potatoes or whatever, right? You know, you have like the thing of mashed potatoes in the middle. Once you finish eating some, you want to get more, you get more. So it's kind of interesting how it's more common for you guys over there, but we still have that here for like the holiday seasons where everyone tries to get together and spend more time together a little bit, you know? Interesting stuff.
Interesting. One thing I kind of want to add to basically both of you is just like in Chinese culture, when you eat, you sit around a round table, you know, which kind of really adds even more. to it, and it also makes it sharing a lot easier because it's just kind of easier for everyone to reach the same thing overall, as opposed to being a really long table. You literally have to have like multiple portions of it in different sides of the table if you want to share. Whereas in a round table, you could have one portion and it's easy, especially if you have like I forget what it's called, but the thing that spins.
Well, let me check
it's
it out.
important that we search this out and get the term ready. But even at lunch, like in high school, it's just really nice having people from kind of your culture that is more used to sharing food than just kind of because I have friends from like Chinese culture, Taiwanese culture, and also like Korean culture and Philippine culture that are more used to sharing food. And during lunch, you do also get to experience what they eat, and they also kind of ask for your food a little bit. So you do get a little bit of that when you are in a community with people from cultures that are more used to it. So it's really cool to kind of have that here in Canada because people are so multicultural. And do you find the term, Raymond?
Oh yeah, it's called lazy Susan.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying with because we have like a big rectangular granite table here in my house. So whenever we're eating something, like let's say we do have like mashed potatoes or whatever, right? It'll be on like one side of the table, and I want some more. I gotta get up, man, because I'm always sitting at one end, right? So I have to get up, or I gotta get somebody to pass it to me. Maybe even just like some ketchup on it. I'll just motion for the ketchup. Sauce me the ketchup. Yeah, but you know what? That reminds me. Now you're talking about like in I think were you talking a little bit about like high school there when you had all those like dude, that reminds me, man. Back in Richmond, man. And I feel like it's universal to everybody, man. The bartering system during lunch times, man. That was a classic. They don't really do that as an adult, but my God, dude, that was classic.
Yes, sir.
Like seaweed, just straight up seaweed, just packets of seaweed. Oh
that
my
was
God,
worth
those
so
are as good as gold, man. Yeah,
it's S tier,
so good. S tier, and like we see, like I went to elementary school in a different city as Raymond, but we both know, dude, that seaweed's as good as gold, man.
Yeah,
so
man. Good. Like it's kind of weird, when you think about it. Like everyone's childhood kind of like have had similar events, if not like kind of like the same events. Like you go online and you see like these like posts or like these like relatable posts on social media. It's like oh, remember back in like whatever when you did this, and everyone in the comments is like, no way. Like yeah man, it's pretty sick. It's pretty nice. I
wonder if anyone's done studies on like the bartering systems kids invent.
I'm sure they have.
Bro,
I'm sure they have.
I feel like that would be real cool. That'd be so cool to look into. Yeah, I know they've looked into like monkeys and stuff, and apparently I'm reading. This is just from a book I read, so I didn't read the whole study or whatever, so I don't know much about it. Apparently, they've gotten monkeys to use money to barter with humans, but they won't do it with themselves. They can't get them to barter with money with themselves. Very interesting.
Damn.
They'll pay us, but they won't.
Yeah,
they don't believe in the money.
Yeah. You could tell.
They won't use it in between themselves.
It's worthless to them.
Damn.
Apparently, that's all.
It's like they know that humans see worth in it, but then between each other, they don't see any worth in that. So yeah. I mean, if there's enough interaction with humans, then they might do some exchange just because they could then use it to trade with humans, right? So
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I'm thinking that probably yeah. If the monkeys realized that they could use the gold to like give it to the, or not the gold, but like just the money to give it to the humans.
Maybe just need more monkey human interactions.
Gotta integrate them into society, damn it.
Oh man. Oh my God.
I actually want to go back to something else you brought up. You're talking about the blood sausage you have, right?
Yeah. Man, dude. Okay, it was. I got a little funny story about that, man. It's called.
Yeah.
It's called morcilla. Man, what's the word? There's a word for walrus, man, but it's real similar. I forget what it is. Off the top of my head, but I always used to think I was eating walrus, dude. As a little kid, I'm like, damn, that's some good walrus, man. I'm like, that's kind of an exotic animal, dude. I feel bad. I never questioned how we imported walrus to Colombia. I never questioned why it didn't look like meat at all. Look, like when I ate it last, I was eating. I'm like, wait a second, this is just like blood and rice, dude. What the?
Walrus is morsa.
Morsa, yeah, dude. There we go. Thank you, morsa and morcilla, dude. I'm like, what? When I figured, I'm like, yo, this is just rice and blood. This isn't meat. This isn't walrus. That makes a lot of sense. But damn it.
No, but yeah, I'm also glad you brought up the walrus thing because this kind of, a lot of people don't eat blood, right? Especially here, like North America and stuff like that. But when you look at across the cultures, when it comes to food, there are some things in North America people generally think are weird that a lot of other cultures actually eat. And blood is definitely one of them. Many cultures have blood sausages. They also have blood in other dishes, whether that's like, I don't know. I think there's blood pudding. I know like in certain dishes as well as in hot pot, one thing you could cook is solidified blood. I'm pretty sure you just put some salt in it and then you just kind of heat it up until like solid sucker form or something. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it, but like so that like blood being one of those things. Other things like tripe, which is like cow stomach. You definitely see that in cuisine all across Asia. You also see it in Italian cuisine, especially Southern Italian cuisine. So there are just like many things that over in North America that a lot of North Americans think are weird and aren't used to, but many cultures around the world actually eat and really like. And it's just very interesting to see how the perception of these, I guess, ingredients could be so different.
I feel like just in general, mostly anything that isn't just straight up meat, it's not very common here, I wonder how much of that is just the fact that the kind of like cuisine and eating habits that people develop here, it's all evolved relatively recently speaking, So like back in the day, back when like people were making blood sausages in like Europe or wherever else, maybe in South America, a lot of the times it's just, hey, you're not going to let that go to waste. It's good food. And it tastes pretty good too. But, maybe in a more affluent society where they don't have that tradition of already eating that, maybe they look down upon those ingredients a little bit. I don't know. I'm sure people have documented this 100% because there's a whole books on this type of stuff, I'm sure. So, I don't know. That's just my best guess, Just people here just never really messed with organ meats. Never really needed to back in the day.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see the types of food people ate during like the Great Depression. If they could get their hands on like stuff like livers or like things like that.
I think beans are pretty popular.
Maybe people ate it more.
I think
beans.
Bees? Oh, dude, I thought you said bees. And I'm like, yo, nah, you tripping. Yeah, beans is a big one. I mean, the States, because they have like the agriculture in the States has been popping for a long time. With corn, corn's been huge. Beans, I'm sure, up there too. So that was probably a big part of it too.
No, what were you gonna say, Raymond?
Man, I don't know. This seems really far fetched. But it kind of relates to like the blood and blood sausages and like why Western civilizations don't really look at that and be like yum. But so my theory is I just came up with this theory. So when the travelers first arrived and took over the Western areas, the Americas, they when they interacted with the indigenous people population and saw and studied like what they would eat, like the things they did, and I feel like because the indigenous people had dishes, of blood, all that kind of variety of like meats and like meat dishes, and coming from the travelers, they're like, damn, like that's pretty, like that's pretty savage, it's yeah. So like maybe over time, there's always like stereotypes of like, oh, like don't eat that type of dishes, those are for yeah, those like people look down upon certain dishes because of the traditions, I guess, like from back then, or how it affects, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, like you know what I'm saying, like um fuck um hmm. so be yeah, yeah,
No, I
yeah,
see where
so
you're coming from.
basically don't eat that, those are that's a savage food or whatever, so yeah, it comes down to, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, they also adopted so much of the, like, for example, I mean, I guess it's a little different, but like you look at like the corn or like probably tomatoes, probably, right?
Yeah, tomatoes,
indigenous to the Americas, right?
and
I'm assuming that
potatoes are
sounds like
both
something.
from
Yeah,
North America or
there's
North
so
and
much,
South
right?
America.
Well,
So I don't know. Maybe they're chill having the vegetables because
yeah,
it is a little
and
different, and like the
it
fruits and
is,
whatnot.
like vegetables are can be grown like everywhere, or vast amount of places. I don't know if like
What?
both of them
I don't
have
know.
it.
Those
Yeah,
first
I
like
don't know if they
settlers,
had it though.
I'm sure those guys eat
Yeah.
whatever they can
That's-
get. No
that's
doubt
true,
about it.
yeah. I don't know.
And like in Europe at the time, it's like, if we're going way, way back, to like the 1600s, 1700s and whatnot, I'm sure they were eating some
Yeah,
real weird
yeah,
stuff
they
back
were
then
for
too,
sure. Yeah.
Especially
That's
just with
true.
yeah, for sure. So I don't know. I don't know about that
Yeah.
theory.
I don't
about
know.
that one.
It's an interesting
kinda
thought.
is.
maybe.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't think it quite makes
Yeah,
sense
for
when you
sure.
look at these historical contexts. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. Maybe not when
Mhm.
like the sellers first came through, but like maybe a little bit like the 1800s, maybe the 1900s. Like yeah, that around time where
I feel like that could really make
I
sense.
mean, dude, old Pemmican,
Like-
dude. People were all about the Pemmican, though.
what's the
No,
Pemmican?
you don't know about the indigenous?
Remember Pemmican?
Oh, come
You don't
on.
know about Pemmican?
Nah.
Yo,
Yeah.
come on, man. The OG and dude, the OG run all the bar, my guy, dude. Pretty much that's what it was. There's like
What,
hold on,
dried
let me pull it up
dried
before we start
berries
recording
and
it.
well, I don't even know what else.
Come
Yeah,
on.
but
Yahoo search come
very
through, babies.
very
Come on.
famous.
Pemmican is a mixture of tallow, dried meat, and dried berries that is used as a nutritious food historically. It was an important part of indigenous cuisine in certain parts of North America, and is still
Damn.
prepared today. And I know, like a lot of sellers relied on that to help them,
Travel?
keep
Yeah,
their energy levels up
exactly.
when they're out and about.
Damn. Okay.
Mhm. With the pioneers and whatnot, yeah.
Nah.
Maybe they didn't see it till you were in
Because
Ontario.
we
who
don't
knows?
learn as much
Who knows?
about the indigenous population here. Like
Wow.
we still learn about like
Mhm.
certain histories, but because we're like
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's in the West. Yeah, I think in the West, since they kind of have to cover the pioneering and all that jazz when they had to travel across the continent. Maybe
Yeah,
that's probably why we know
maybe.
about it, George and I.
mhm.
Because I mean, I'm sure Pemmican didn't play as much of a role near the East Coast where they had.
Yeah.
They just had their settlements right there. They didn't
Yeah.
need the Pemmican to help them stay. Yeah, they didn't need the
Yeah.
Pemmican.
I don't know because
But I'm sure as you're adventuring across the plains and
I
whatnot,
mean like
Pemmican comes in clutch.
I don't know because like over here we don't really learn too much about the indigenous side of things, like, or too much history about them. Like we still learn some, but like not as close to like the amount you guys learn. especially like comparing from like being from both BC and Ontario. Like in grade 8, like for history, I learned so much about the Aboriginals or Indigenous people, and then when I got here, we kind of skimmed over it real quick. It's like, oh yeah, what Canadians did to the Aborigines or Indigenous people. That was it. Like, there wasn't too much about anything else. So I'm missing out, man. I'm missing out.
I don't know about the Indigenous food culture.
Missing out, man.
Come on.
Crazy.
Yes, sir.
You don't know about it. To be fair, I don't know anything else other than pemmican now that I think about it.
Yeah, salmon.
Oh, salmon, dude.
Yeah.
Salmon, never mind. Never mind, dude. They're all about that. Never mind, dude.
But
yeah, dude, no, dude, I've known about that one since I was a little boy. Holy moly.
Yeah. Just one thing that I also found really interesting, that talking about these Indigenous food kind of made me think of, and talking about kind of that time period way back. In one of the courses I've taken just the past semester, it was about medieval foods in Europe. And one of the things that I really realized from that is just kind of how certain foods really come into popularity, fades out, and come back into popularity. And these things aren't really new. They just kind of cycle in and out of popularity. So one of the things that is becoming really popular nowadays is these nut milks, almond milk, whatever, other kind of milk. Yeah.
We don't talk to me about oat milk, man.
Yeah, but like these are popular.
No,
they were popular back in the Middle Ages, especially for those for two, like for people who don't have access to like animal milk, and those who are doing Lent or other type of fasting kind of thing where they can't really eat animal products. So they were popular and they were common, and just interesting to see how some of those foods back in those days that are popular faded out, and people don't really think of them as something that existed for so long. Because now when we think about like almond milk, oat milk, whatever, we think it's come kind of like new, just, I don't know, healthy eating, more vegan or whatnot, kind of more newly popular eating habits and cultures that's developed, especially in North America. It's just interesting to see that.
Yeah,
very much so. I mean, there's whole channels dedicated to just cooking historical foods. So it's neat to see how many of the historical foods were just really just no thank you, based on like necessity. They had to preserve it a certain way. So this is the nasty stuff they used to eat back then. But then you also get like the foods that you're talking about that just happen to fade out of popularity for whatever reason, Or like, for example, the caviar is an interesting one, because caviar for the longest time, if I remember correctly, from as far as I know,
same with oxtail.
It wasn't always considered a luxury food.
Same idea.
Yeah. I didn't even know oxtail's a thing. I didn't even know.
But plenty of foods like that.
That's pretty dope.
That were just kind of whatever, and then became luxury. And just interesting to see the status of foods changing throughout time as well. Especially like spices, common spices we have like nowadays. A lot of them were so rare and expensive and just valued way more than like other, other things we consider like valuable now. What people would give up for certain spices back in the day is kind of crazy. And just think about the effort they made. Like, why did they come to North America and South America? They were trying to go into Asia for spices. So it's interesting to see the changes in foods, in food item, in status, ingredients throughout the time. And just so much about food that a lot of people don't really think about every day, but are actually so interesting and do play such a big part in life today, in history, and in our cultures. Crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Very much.
And I
so.
think maybe
It's
that's a good place to kind of end off this topic. If you have any last word to say, Raymond.
I think so.
uh,
Any last words, Raymond?
I have a family, guys. Come on. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
All right.
That was a good
Well, let's do our ending segment on highlights of the week. If either one of you want to start.
Damn, I don't know. This week hasn't been too eventful. Haven't been too eventful.
AMC had a good day on Monday, which is the day we're filming it. So
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
that's a highlight.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Anything for you?
Yeah. MC definitely a highlight. I'm also spending a week at my girlfriend's new place. So
Nice.
Oh, new
Yeah.
place. Congrats.
So
that's
that's that.
pretty dope. Didn't know that.
Yeah, like that.
Yo, does she have either
Hey,
of those
man,
there?
I'm thinking about it, man. I think I saw one, so we gotta gooch.
Yo.
But yeah. So yeah. Pretty good week, or a pretty good Monday, but yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for me,
Do you guys count the start of the week? When do you guys count the start of the week? Because I always just thought of Monday as the start of the
It's
week, but apparently
Sunday.
it's not the case. A lot
Yeah,
of people think
I
the
go
first
with
day of the
Monday,
week is
man.
Sunday. Apparently, I don't know.
It's
Like cut the weekend in half, dude. Come on, how you gonna
Dude,
cut the
it's
weekend in
definitely
half
Monday,
like that?
bro.
No,
uh,
that's
dude.
not right.
It's Friday, Saturday,
Monday.
and Sunday. I would consider Friday sometimes, being part of the weekend.
Like if you ask a kid to name all the days of the week,
Exactly,
they're gonna
yeah.
start with Monday.
I mean,
They're gonna start with Monday every time.
The
never
other
gonna
thing
go
is
Sunday,
like,
Monday.
with the Chinese background, you're always gonna say Monday, just the way the language works. It's literally like, if you were to
Yeah.
translate it, it basically means like weekday 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
So it's very difficult for anyone with the Chinese background to really conceptualize Sunday being the first day of the week. Yeah.
How did Chinese
Oh,
calendars work
I
for the
don't know.
longest time? Because I'm assuming they
The
were
lunar
on the
calendar,
Gregorian calendar
I'm not
for the longest
familiar with
time,
that.
really.
No.
Yeah.
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 It would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I know time were a lot more divided up, a lot more precise. Yeah. Well, maybe not precise, but just more divided. I guess, okay. To end off my highlight of the week. The big highlight is got a new laptop. Yeah, it actually arrived almost 2 weeks ago, I guess.
Yes,
but
sir.
last week, so the past week, was the first time I used it to edit the podcast. And it was so much easier and faster. And especially the exporting was ridiculously quick. Oh my goodness, it's a game changer. so a huge highlight for that.
Hey,
Yeah.
dude, read out the specs, man.
okay,
The specs are crazy on it right now, man. Especially for the price you got it at. The price you got it at. I can't get over it. It puts my PC to shame. You only paid a couple $100 more.
Yeah. So, what is it? It's what's it called? AMD. Is that the? Yeah. So
Yeah,
what?
AMD Ryzen.
I think it's a 3900. Something like that. Yeah, and
Something like that.
the RAM is 32 GB. The graphics card is what is it? 3060. 3060, yeah.
Or 3060.
Okay.
3060.
Pretty good. And it's like 1 TB of the space.
For an SSD,
Yeah,
that's not hard.
that's right.
That's an SSD, my guy.
Yeah, and it's got a pretty nice screen
Solid-state
too. I
drive.
forget what it is, but yeah, exactly.
It's like QHD or something
144
like that. So it's like
Yeah, I
probably
think
like
so.
1440
Yeah.
D at least, right?
But it's a beast,
Damn.
man. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I mean, the craziest thing is the price you get it off for
Yeah.
is absolutely mental. Absolutely, you get it for like two
2,000
something K. Crazy.
400, I think.
That's a steal, dude.
Damn.
Yeah. Yep.
That's an absolute steal. That's an
Yeah.
absolute
Wait.
steal.
Yeah,
Canadian.
Yeah,
Canadian. But wait, it was actually. It was. I think it was 2,300, and then there's like tax. So
Damn.
after tax, it was more like, I don't know, 500 something. Yeah. And it was $400 off.
Still, dude.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. It's 2,700 and with $400 off. Yeah. Yeah.
Clean.
Pretty sick, bro. Yeah. Thanks for watching. That's from
Thanks
us.
for watching, guys.
And we'll see you again next week.